Welcome to Equitas Insights, a series of conversations with industry leaders that provide an in-depth understanding on the relevant topics in the HR and recruitment industry. This month, we had the opportunity to speak with Martyn Redstone, who is a recruitment chatbot and conversation AI advisor at peoplebots.com, to discuss the state of chatbots and conversational AI today and how advanced the user experience is, especially in recruitment.
Thank you, Martyn, for taking time to speak with me today. So for the aim of this video, on this episode, we just want to kind of get to the sort of state of chatbots and, what are the use for them for companies today. And before we dive into it, I know there might be some people that might not be too familiar with this term. So would you give a brief definition and overview to what chatbots and conversation AI is?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for inviting me, Rachel. I'm really excited to go through this with you. So look, we can go through this very, very simply. Chat, have a conversation. It popped in for a chat. We can break that down into two words: bot, an autonomous piece of software on a network, usually the internet, that automates something. So you put them together and you get chatbot. So what that basically is an automated conversation. And so that's ultimately what a chatbot is. It is a software that automates a conversation between a person and a machine. And that's actually a really important definition, because in the world of chat, a lot of people misunderstand that. And so when you go on the internet and you go onto a website and you're looking for some customer service, you tend to see three different types of chat interface going on there. The first one is chatbot, as I just said, that automated, you're just talking to a computer and the computer's answering you. You've then got the live chat, which is the really annoying one, in my opinion, where you go onto a website, I need some help, and it comes up saying, sorry, all of our operators are busy, or all of our operators are offline, please hold for somebody. It's as bad as phoning up, a customer service line and just being put on hold for infinity. And so that's the second type of chat that you're used to from an interface perspective. Then we've got the hybrid model, which works quite nicely, which is where you start the interaction off with that automated chatbot piece. And the chatbot gets to the end of where it can help you, whether it be the simple stuff, taking data, understanding what you're querying for, or just getting to the point where it just doesn't know the answer, and then handing off to a human. That's actually quite a nice way of doing it. And we see that quite a lot. People at Amazon use that type of technology, and lots of other people as well. So that's the hybrid piece. Those are the three different types of chat interface that people tend to be used to. But the term conversational AI is quite specific. Now, when you look at chatbots and that automated conversation that flows back and forth, you've got two different types of chatbot technology that manages that conversation. So the first one is what we call that decision tree, rules-based chatbot, which is quite simply exactly that. It's a decision tree. You hit an option up there, it takes you to there. It asks you, rate this 0 to 5. You hit 0, it takes you to there. It says, tell me a little bit more about this. Tell me a bit more. It takes you to there. It's very, very rules based. It's almost like a process flow of conversation, and that has its benefits. They all have their upsides and their downsides. Ultimately, it's fantastic for things like FAQ management. It's really quick to get that kind of conversation up and running, that technology up and running, because it takes no training. It just takes designing where that flow of conversation goes. And on the other hand, you have that conversational AI based chatbot. Now, conversational AI isn't a technology. It's a group of different technologies all kind of smashed into one. Conversational AI is a stack of technologies, which is natural language understanding, natural language processing. We talk about understanding processing as, you process the natural language, you understand what somebody's trying to say. You then use machine learning to work out how to answer that query or that comment. And then you use natural language generation to create the response. So that's where you kind of see that technology stack of conversational AI. So it's a group of technologies put together in order to create this artificial intelligence-based conversation. And so those are the two different types of chatbots out there: the decision tree-based chatbot and the conversational AI-based chatbot. Is that long-winded way of answering?
That's perfect. That makes totally sense. So just touching upon that. So, I read this article on, basically said by the end of 2021, 80% of businesses would have some sort of chatbot automation. And I guess what really I want to get at is what really is the value in these chatbots sort of conversations with for companies, and like, you know, what sort of benefits can they offer for businesses with regards to recruitment?
Yeah, so there's lots of different thought processes behind that. Take it from the basis of Salesforce last year, they sent out a survey to, I think, 2,500 people, 2,500 of their enterprise customers, and only 14% came back to say if they were presented with a website that had both a form and a chatbot, they'd choose the form. So 86% of people would choose the chatbot to just provide data. So that's the first kind of thought process, is actually people prefer to have a chat, have a conversation. And actually, since 2016, more people have been using chat-based apps than social media-based apps. So we saw in 2016 this kind of move towards messaging. Is probably the best way of putting it. So you think about things like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Slack, Teams, all those kind of things that enable messaging and enable chat-based conversation. So since 2016, more people have been using those than have been using social media, and that just goes to show, how much people want to chat and want to converse. Ultimately, it's one of the most natural ways of interacting is through conversation. And we'll talk about natural conversation in terms of voice a bit later on. But so that's the first bit. Filling in a form. Nobody really wants to fill in a form. They don't want to navigate around a website anymore and try and find what they're looking for. They just want to straight away talk to a little box in the bottom right hand corner and say, I'm looking for this, or can you help me, or I want to understand your pricing, or something like that. And fill in a form, and somebody comes back to you and fill in a conversational form, basically.
Yeah,
that's the first way. But what we've seen in over the course of the last 14, 15 months of being in this pandemic has been a rapid implementation of digital transformation in communication strategy in businesses across the world. And Twilio, mid-pandemic, did a survey of 4,500 of their enterprise clients globally. We're talking literally globally. And some of the results that came out of that were just staggering. And what we saw with that report was around about, overall, the pandemic actually pushed forward most people's digital communication strategy by 6 years on average. So you think about that. Where at the beginning of 2020, a business thought, right, well, by 2026, this is what we want to be doing when it comes to digital communication strategy, which includes things like chatbots. And the pandemic enabled them to say, actually, we need to be there now, because what's happening is people aren't in the office. Our customer service teams have had to go to kind of bare bones in terms of people because we haven't got the technology in order to enable customer service teams to work remotely, etc., etc. And so we need to automate a lot of what's happening out there, utilizing technology like chatbots. So what we saw very, very quickly at the beginning of last year, or the first half of last year, was this massive adoption of conversational AI-based technology, and that's across the board from chat through to voice. So you think about phoning up. Travel companies obviously were hugely impacted by the pandemic last year, and hospitality companies, all this kind of, but mostly travel companies and financial services companies, where not only did they have to reduce their staff either through furlough schemes, redundancy, all those kind of things, but they had a massive uptick in demand on them from a customer service perspective, because you have people who had to cancel holidays, you have people having issues financially, and all those kind of things. So what did they do? They implemented conversational-based technology, whether that be online chatbots. Banks like NatWest, they've got a superb chatbot now on there that's winning awards, because they had to ramp that up really quickly last year to IVR technology. So when you phone up a customer service team, rather than having to go through press 1 for this, 4 for this, 8 for this, etc., and then getting through to a customer service team, the conversational technology can actually start talking to you and going through a lot of the things that ultimately are very mundane, very repetitive from an organization perspective, but are a massive burden from a volume perspective. So that's where we've seen this massive adoption of conversational technology, and where you see these stats like 80% of businesses by next year. And ultimately, when we see businesses, most of these reports are talking about enterprise level businesses. But 80% of companies are looking to implement some kind of chat-based technology by the end of this year, and it's because of that. It's because they realise that actually they can do a lot more with less, and they can automate a lot of the conversation flow that happens quite naturally in their current operations. They can provide a much better service to their customers, and they can do that at scale, and not have to bring on hundreds or thousands of people to do that.
Yeah, I understand, agree. So one thing I also want to touch upon is that, okay, it's very clear the value they offer in terms of consistency, and they can do this at scale. But would you say there are areas where okay, let's just say in certain areas that chatbots are really needed, and some areas where they aren't that useful, or people prefer to speak to like human service teams?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always there's always good and bad when it comes to any kind of technology, and some organizations will very irresponsibly implement technology, and some organizations will do it absolutely fantastic, and some organizations won't do it at all. But I mean, the biggest challenge that we always have when it comes to chatbot technology is the fact that the internet is so full of poor examples of chatbots. And so when you go to a website and up it pops in the bottom right hand corner, and you're just thinking, just go away. I don't want to talk to you. Why are you here? And it's not contextual, and it's not appropriate. It's just saying, hey, how can I help you? And it's not so there's really, really bad ways that you can implement chatbot technology. And actually, that's one of the things that I find personally that I become more and more busy with, is helping people to create appropriate conversations and appropriate chatbot implementation. So we look at so what we do is and this kind of answers your question really, is you look at what's happening across the organization, and I call it, and it's quite corny based on the whole pandemic and everything, but I call it flattening the conversation curve. So ultimately you look at your level of conversations across your workflow. So in recruitment, you think about advertising roles, taking applications, screening those applications, setting up interviews, going through offer management, starting people in the role. So that kind of process. And you look at that and you think, well, there's a ton of conversations right at the start, and it kind of peters off as you go to the bottom of the process, which kind of mimics the funnel in terms of the number of people. But ultimately, those conversations that really peak right at the beginning, do they need to be conversations that are had between a person and a person? And when you start looking at it, you think, well, actually, most of those, like 80% of those conversations, are the same 5 things that just are repeated, and it's a total time drain on the recruiter, and it's just a very, very poor experience from the candidate's perspective. So you can, what I say, flatten that conversation curve in terms of the number of conversations a recruiter's having by automating those. Now, when we go through that flow, that recruitment process flow, and we start looking at the stages, and we say, yeah, it's quite appropriate because somebody's applying for a role, they're interested, want to find out more, they want to have some questions answered, they might want to be taken through that application conversationally, etc. That makes perfect sense because it's very what's the word, I suppose, very low risk from an experience perspective, but it's very high value from an automation perspective. Now, as you go through that process and you go to areas like offer management, you don't really want to be having a chatbot involved in offer management because it's actually quite an emotive personal thing that somebody might want to negotiate on their terms and conditions, on their salaries, on their annual leave allowances, all those kind of things. So you don't really want to be having a conversation with a chatbot when you're trying to negotiate that. And granted, there are negotiation bots that are out there, but I don't believe that that's the kind of place. Now, that's the whole point of chatbot technology, especially in the recruitment process, is removing the mundane, repetitive, quite boring conversations that are going on to give the recruiter a massive productivity gain, giving them a lot more time back in their week to have the more worthwhile, the more meaningful, the more emotive human-to-human interaction that they're very, very good at. So that would be my thought process behind that.
Amazing. So when I think about it, right, because I remember my experiences using chatbots, and sometimes they can be frustrating, and then other times they can be just brilliant, especially with the hybrid process ones where like Amazon, they do it brilliantly. They have the whole selection process and like connecting us to someone. And then when you have that, more human connection with regards to, let's just say there's a problem or a refund or those kind of issues, I feel like there are some people who prefer to have those kind of conversations with the human teams. But with regards to chatbots, I get that whole automation really makes things a lot more easier for both parties as well, So 100% agree with what you're saying there.
Martyn brought up some great insights on the different stages in the recruitment process and highlighted the areas that could benefit from automation and areas that will work best with human interaction. This goes to show the importance of chatbot automation and how more companies should look to adopt this technology. It is also important to note that chatbot automation and human service teams are both needed to help your company create a seamless customer experience. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to watch part 2, as the next episode really gets into how advanced chatbots really are and the impact of voice technology.